My friends, today is March the 4th. I want you to hold that date for a moment. March the 4th. Because for 144 years of this republic, from the very first inauguration of George Washington until the cold gray morning of 1933, March the 4th was the day America passed the torch. It was written that way from the beginning, not by accident, but by necessity. In those early years, it took time to count the votes. It took time to travel. A man elected in November needed until March simply to make the journey to the capital and prepare to govern. And so the Constitution fixed the date, March the 4th, and there it stayed through war and peace, through prosperity and panic, through the long unfolding story of a nation. 42 times on this date, one American stood before the people and took upon himself the way to the office. The last man to do so was Franklin Roosevelt. March the 4th, 1933. The banks were failing. 12 million Americans were out of work. People were afraid. Not the ordinary worry of hard times, but a deeper fear, the kind that makes a person wonder if the whole structure might simply come apart. Roosevelt stood in that cold wind and said what the country needed to hear. Not that everything was fine, it was not fine. Not that the road ahead was easy, it was not easy. He said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And the country exhaled. Four years later, the 20th Amendment took effect. Inauguration Day moved to January the 20th, where it sits today. The long lame duck winters are over. The machinery of government would turn much more quickly now. March 4th became another day on the calendar. Except I don't think it has to be. I am here today on this date because I believe some things are worth remembering. And I believe this country is worth talking about plainly, the way people plainly talk about, without theater, without performance, without telling you what you want to hear. So let me tell you what I see. I see a country that has been through things, real things. We have known poverty that has ground men down to nothing. We have known wars that have took our sons and daughters and sent them home or didn't send them home at all. We have known drought and flood, plague and fire, the long grinding uncertainty of years when nothing seemed to work the way it was supposed to. We have been here before, my friends. Different circumstances, same essential test. Whether this people, this remarkable, stubborn, cantankerous, generous people, has what it takes to hold together and do the work. And every time, every single time, the answer has been yes. Not because our leaders were always wise, they weren't. Not because our institutions were always just, they have fallen short, and we know it. But because somewhere in the character of the ordinary American, the farmer and the factory worker, the school teacher and the storekeeper, the mother who keeps family fed when times are lean, someone somewhere in there is something that refuses to quit. I have seen it. I have seen it in small towns that have lost their industry and found another way. I've seen it in communities that disagreed about everything except that their children needed to be fed and the old needed to be cared for. I've seen it in the quiet daily heroism of people who simply show up, who do what they say they would do, who carry their share, who help their neighbors even when a neighbor is a stranger. That is America. Not the argument, the person underneath the argument. Now, I said I would talk plainly, and plainly, there are things in this country that concern me. We are a people who have grown accustomed to being told what we want to hear. The voices that shout the loudest get the most attention. And the loudest voices are often the angriest ones. Somewhere along the way, disagreement became warfare, and the person who held a different opinion became an enemy rather than a neighbor. That troubles me. Not because disagreement is wrong, disagreement is healthy, disagreement is American. We are built on that argument. But there is a difference between argument and contempt. Argument says, I believe you are wrong, and here is why. Contempt says, I believe you are beneath consideration. And when contempt becomes the language of public life, the common work becomes impossible. And the common work, that is everything. Because here is the truth that no one particularly likes to say out loud. The country does not belong to any party. It does not belong to any faction, any ideology, any movement, any human person. It belongs to the people. All of us. The ones you agree with and the ones that drive you to distraction. The ones in the city and the ones in the countryside. The ones who have been here for generations. And the ones that just came here last year because they believed this place was worth the journey. We the people. That is not a slogan. That is a contract. A contract we made with each other at the founding of this nation and have been renewing ever since, imperfectly, painfully, but renewing. And that compact asks something of us. It asks us to look out for each other, to remember that our neighbor's good is bound up with our own, that a country where only some prosper is a country that is losing ground, that we rise together, or eventually, we do not rise. I'm not a man who believes that government solves everything. It doesn't. There are things that only communities can do, things that only families can do, things that only individuals, each of us, looking at ourselves honestly in the mirror, can do. But I'm also not a man who believes that we can pull alone and call that strength. We built this country together. The roads and the schools, the bridges and the harbors, the institutions that make ordinary life possible. Those were built by people who understood that some things are bigger than themselves and bigger than any one person, and that investing in the whole is how you protect the part. That is not radical. That's practical. That is American tradition at its best. My friends, I'm going to close the same way I began, with March the 4th. This date will never be Inauguration Day. That chapter is closed, and rightfully so. But I think there is something valuable in remembering it, and stopping on this day to ask ourselves the question that every inauguration asked. What kind of country are we going to be? Not what kind of country are we, or what kind of country should someone else make us? But what kind of country are we going to be, you and I, today in the choices we make and the character we bring to bear? Roosevelt stood here, metaphorically, 92 years ago and told a frightened nation that fear was the enemy. And he was right. Fear closes us off from each other. Fear makes neighbors into strangers and strangers into threats. And fear is the thing that convinces us the common work is impossible before we have even tried. I refuse that counsel. I believe this country is capable of more than we are currently asking of it. I believe the people of this nation, ordinary, complex, complicated, imperfect, are capable of far more than fear. I believe that we can disagree without hating. I believe we can struggle without surrendering. I believe we can look at the real challenges before us, and they are real, and decide, as Americans have decided before, that we are going to meet them. Not because it is easy, but because it is ours to do. This country has been entrusted to us, not to the powerful, not to the privileged, not to any particular class, creed, or corner of the map. To us, to the people, we the people. That is the promise. That is the burden. That is the extraordinary ongoing American experience. And I, for one, am not finished with it. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless these United States of America.